Today's knowledge bite is around a tricky issue, or perhaps an extension of a tricky issue. It's one that has tripped a lot of people up, and I know that because I've gotten asked this question a lot because it ended up on an expert developer exam, and to my knowledge, it's actually wound its way back off of said exam. This one is interesting because it really tests our knowledge of how the Adobe Commerce checkout works. And it's kind of important. So let's dive in and see where this is all coming from here. You are developing a Magento 2 extension that is supposed to track a post-order action in both the front end and the admin areas. You've decided to observe the sales order place after event. Your observer is placed at right here. After placing the order from the front end, the observer works perfectly. However, when creating an order from the admin panel, the observer isn't being triggered. What's the reason? Well, we have, as always, several different options for our answers. And let's see what these options might entail. A, your observer is declared in a non-admin area. Okay. The admin orders do not trigger the sales order placed after event. And C, there is an error in the observer code. Let's work through each one of these one by one. A, your observer is declared in a non-admin area. To me, this is a pretty logical assumption. Now, here's the thing. Did you know, and check me on this, did you know that when placing an order with the web in the checkout, there the area for these requests, actually with the area that is placing the order, is not the front end area. It is the web API REST area. Folks, you know there's a difference. And that can trip you up. It's tripped me up myself. So it can be tricky to remember. So the first thing we should possibly consider is pulling this observer into just the general Etsy directory, which will make this observer usable for all events overall. So to me, A seems like a really likely answer, but for the sake of comparison, we have to keep moving on. The admin area orders do not trigger the sales order place after event. I am not aware of how this would be a true statement. The admin orders go through the same placing order process. There might be a couple other events that are triggered to my knowledge in the admin area, but there is no event that is not triggered for the admin area, unless obviously there might be some front end specific events too. But at the end of the day, sales order placed after will be triggered for everything according to my knowledge. So B is incorrect. Now, see, that would also be incorrect as well. So thus we have our answer. Or do we? Or do we? What if I told you that A is also wrong? Even though in a technical perspective, A is correct, in the grand scheme, the vision, thinking into the future for the websites we're working on, could A actually be incorrect? And the answer is yes. A is actually incorrect. Why is that? Well, that's because Adobe Commerce is working to reduce the number of customizations in the core code. And by declaring an observer for sales order place after in the core code, the monolith, we are now starting to hold this merchant into the past. Whereas Adobe is trying to create Magento 3, as I've been calling it here lately. You see, Adobe I/O is Adobe's new path, their new route to being able to create a system that is, let's just say, a little bit more maintainable. And by virtue of that, a lot more stable. I want to give you just a quick overview as far as what this looks like overall. There's a couple of pieces. First, check this out. We come into here into Adobe Services, Adobe I/O Events. We have to configure some of this information. There is lots of instructions. For example, right here we can see how to set this up. No big deal. Honestly, it's pretty easy. Obviously, you won't have to install the Adobe I/O CLI command. Again, not a big deal to do at all. So ultimately, it's a matter of configuring this, and then you have to enable these events. So basically, there is even a command to do this. It ends up writing it into our app.etc config file. And basically, whenever this which is declared, there's a way to declare these, and is triggered, this event is triggered, it basically listens to it and then passes these specific fields up to Adobe I/O. Now, you might say, Joseph, why do we have to specify the fields? Isn't this a real pain? Well, folks, we have entered into a different era when it comes to data protection and privacy. We can't just pass everything up because ultimately we could be running into PCI compliance issues. We have to be very careful and studied with what we're passing up. Thus, it comes down to a slightly more manual approach when saying what fields we want to actually push up. This is all customizable. We can pass up our own events. And in fact, in the Adobe I/O area in their developer console, you can actually then use trigger these events from other sources. In other words, you can actually integrate your ERP directly into App Builder, which kind of, again, decentralizes it off of Adobe Commerce. This is all new information, and this is a very different way of looking at development. To be frank, we're investing a significant of research and development into this area ourselves, so we fully grasp this, and I'm pretty excited about some of the progress that we have been making, and am looking forward to being able to share that with you here over the coming months and years. To be clear, the answers in this question, I consider them at this point essentially all wrong, even if there was one that was technically correct. The true correct answer at this point is to begin starting to use App Builder. That's how we see it. Talk to you soon.